From his roots as a troubled youth who never finished high school, to a businessman with a net worth in the multi-millions, we've decided to make this one for his retirement clash and trilogy fight with the great Max Holloway. Let us know in the comments below who you think takes it at UFC 318, and what is your favorite Dustin Poirier moment from over the years. Here are 7 things you didn't know about Dustin The Diamond Poirier. There really is something poetic about setting Poirier and Holloway up for a third and final matchup like this. Dustin may have beaten Holloway twice already, but their second fight was an instant classic, and featured a version of Max moving up in weight without adequate preparation for the physicality of the lightweight division. Their first fight, and here's the poetic part, was actually the 20-year-old Holloway's first ever fight in the UFC. And now, all these years later, he'll welcome Poirier to the cage for his retirement. These two men have played huge ceremonial roles in each other's careers, and it just gives this fight a much deeper meaning. MMA doesn't quite have an answer to the defensive mastery of Floyd Mayweather in boxing, but being that good and not getting hit in 4-ounce gloves is damn near impossible. However, that doesn't mean we don't have some incredibly crafty defensive fighters. And though Poirier certainly has had his chin tested on more than one occasion, in key moments he has been quite difficult to tag cleanly due to his ability to utilize the shoulder roll and the elbow-heavy stonewall defense. It's quite an unorthodox thing to see in mixed martial arts, but Poirier's used the shoulder rolls in the pocket to great effect in showdowns with very game opponents like Dan Hooker, Justin Gaethje, and Conor McGregor, among others. It's a very rare thing to see in MMA, and when paired with his use of the check hook as a counter, Poirier becomes a very difficult boxer to tangle with. Dustin Poirier knew he was a fighter sooner than most. He grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana in a family with Cajun roots. In fact, he once claimed that he would have been a chef if he wasn't a fighter. That's how much he loves Cajun food. But to say his childhood was peaceful would be an outright lie. Dustin was often involved in street fights, and despite the fact that he did attend high school for a while, he eventually dropped out in the 9th grade due to his constant involvement in fights. Thankfully, instead of falling into a life of crime, he eventually found his way into an MMA gym and turned pro at the age of 20. And the rest, as they say, is history. Long before he became known to the masses for his gritty work in the featherweight division, and then a mainstream success in his later years, Poirier actually had a pretty pivotal role in the 2011 documentary Fightville, a film that focuses on fighters based in the Louisiana scene. The film takes a look at several athletes who had a tough background and their struggle to make something of themselves. And in an almost prophetic decision, the filmmakers saw something in Poirier and gave him and his story a pretty large chunk of screen time. Safe to say, their decision paid off. Filming took place a few years before Poirier took on Conor McGregor for the first time, and who could have known how his career trajectory would play out? Remember, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to get involved by liking the video and leaving a comment. Poirier is a guy who has had the pleasure of sharing the cage with some of the most iconic fighters of all time: Khabib Nurmagomedov, Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez, Islam Makhachev, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, his next opponent Max Holloway. The list goes on. But if you ask the man himself who his dream fight would have been from any era, the answer may surprise you. Poirier, like most MMA watchers who saw him in his prime, is a huge BJ Penn fan. So much so that he described the prodigy as the one fight he would have loved. Some of you might only know Penn from his horrible decline both inside and outside the cage, but at his best, he was an all-time great, as well-rounded as any fighter in MMA history. The Diamond is the perfect nickname for Dustin for a variety of reasons, and over the course of his long and storied career, you could argue that the name has become even more fitting. Supposedly, Poirier's teammate and BJJ coach, Tim Credor, the guy who gave him his black belt, once remarked that Dustin performed so well under pressure that he was like a diamond, and from there the nickname stuck. But as time went on, the overall career arc that he undertook gave the Diamond an even deeper level of connection. There was a point in time when he was seen as an underwhelming featherweight, a guy who would fail to turn up on the biggest nights of his career. But when he moved to lightweight, he managed to carve out an all-time great 155-pound career. climbing to the elite level and challenging for UFC gold 3 times. Pressure creates diamonds, and that's quite true of Dustin. Most of you will no doubt be aware of some of Dustin's business ventures due to the plugs he made for his brand of hot sauce during the build-up to UFC 257's clash with Conor McGregor. But beyond that, he's also the owner of a successful bourbon company, Rare Stash. Outside of money-making, he is known as a beloved philanthropist, having worked with or directly started a series of charities. You could tell that he was genuinely hurt over McGregor's part in the non-payment to his most famous charity, The Good Fight. And it's not hard to see why. The guy's clearly invested in what he does. Enjoy this video? Well, why don't you support the channel by checking out some of our other uploads? Thanks for watching!